Secrets of the Baby Whisperer. How to Calm, Connect, and Communicate with Your Baby, 2001, by Tracy Hogg with Melinda Blau offers a practical guide to understanding babies. Writing to soothe the frazzled nerves of new parents and parents-to-be, Hogg offers level-headed advice for young families who want to establish organized routines and get a good night's sleep. Baby whispering may sound mysterious, but it's mostly a matter of close observation. Babies are surprisingly nuanced communicators, offering constant feedback on their likes, dislikes, and needs. But in lieu of spoken language, babies depend on nonverbal cues like cries, facial expressions, and body language. A parent's job is to interpret those signals and respond in a way that makes the baby feel safe without becoming dependent on a parent's presence for constant comfort. Even in the first months of life, when babies depend entirely on their parents for their survival, it's important to establish boundaries that help them independently soothe themselves and spend time alone. Parents can gently guide their babies through the day with well-established routines. To a baby, the world is filled with strange sights and sounds that can be frightening. It is the parent's job to cultivate a safe, loving, and predictable environment in which the baby can begin to make sense of it all. Parents are very busy, with many demands on their time. In the chaos of household life, it's easy to fall into an automatic mode of parenting with a motto of, whatever works, to solve a problem. Often with the best of intentions, parents inadvertently guide their children into bad eating and sleeping habits that negatively impact the whole family. With patience and thoughtful tweaks to the baby's routine, order can be restored. But the parent, not the baby, must take the lead in fixing bad habits. This process takes time. Like any skill, good parenting requires practice and patience. Baby whisperers must take their inevitable failures in stride, building self-confidence by accepting and fixing mistakes along the way. Parenting is hard work, and its day-to-day struggles can be difficult to keep in perspective when everyone's tired. Even problems that feel overwhelming in the moment will ease with time, and the rewards are well worth the investment. Key Insight 1. Respect for the baby is the cornerstone of baby whispering. The foundational principle of baby whispering is that babies are deeply intelligent beings who deserve respect and empathy. They're always listening and learning, and parents are their first role models. Parents should speak to their babies as though they can understand language and reason. Even if they can't interpret the words yet, they understand the meaning on some level. It can be difficult for parents to talk to their babies in this way at first because it feels like a ridiculous monologue. But it's better to think about it as a dialogue with the baby. One way to respect babies is to see them as individuals. Like adults, babies have different personalities. It's important to see babies for who they are, not who their parents wish them to be. Many parents come into their roles with romantic ideas about parenthood, as well as an idealized notion of what their child will be like. One way to combat this is always to call the baby by first name, rather than using baby as a general noun when speaking directly to the baby or to other people. Another is not to become too invested in developmental milestones. Babies all develop at their own pace. A newborn's personality begins to emerge very early, often after just 3 days. Broadly, there are 5 types of baby personality: angel, textbook, touchy, spirited, and grumpy. Angel babies are easygoing and well-behaved. Textbook babies are predictable. Touchy babies are fussy. Spirited babies are excited and opinionated, and grumpy babies are perpetually irritated. Some babies may combine characteristics from more than one type, because the types are not mutually exclusive. The 5 types are merely a diagnostic tool to help parents better understand their baby's general dispositions. Key Insight 2. Babies thrive when their days and nights follow predictable routines. There are a lot of things that babies don't understand about the world. Imposing patterns, structure, and daily rhythms will help them make sense of a confusing world. Routines and rituals paired with environmental cues help babies interpret what's going on around them. When a parent dims the lights, for instance, the baby understands it's time to go to sleep. This preparation can and should begin before the baby is born so that the child's first days at home don't coincide with attempts to establish a new routine. To prepare, parents can stock up on nursing supplies or formula, clothing, diapers, and other necessities. Extra steps, such as washing and folding the baby's clothes, will make it easier to establish routines later. After the baby comes home, it's important to establish a daily routine as soon as possible. This schedule is more of a guideline than a rigid agenda, but it must be imposed by the parent, not dictated by the baby. Many parents resist routines because they think enforcing a routine on a baby is harsh or overly strict. In truth, consistency helps cultivate calmness and predictability, two qualities that appeal to all kinds of babies. And predictability also helps parents and other caregivers plan the day. The rule of thumb for establishing a newborn's schedule can be remembered with the acronym EASY, which is short for eating, activity, sleeping, and you. The pattern repeats at roughly 3-hour intervals. First, the baby eats for 25 to 40 minutes. Then the baby enjoys some form of activity, like a bath or a stroll. The third step is sleep, which should always occur in the baby's crib. During the 45 to 75-minute period that the baby sleeps, parents can take time for themselves, for example, by getting some rest. The EASY routine helps take some of the guesswork out of caring for a baby. The parent can make an educated inference about whether the baby wants food, stimulation, or a nap depending on where the baby is in the recurring cycle. Parents should log the times of these activities, especially at first, to help them discern patterns that may not be immediately obvious. Key Insight 3. Babies have their own secret language that they express with nonverbal cues. If babies could talk, parents would have an easier time determining what they need. As things are, parents must commit themselves to a bit of detective work. With practice, it's possible to discern the meaning of a baby's cries. The cries of a hungry baby sound different from those of a tired baby, for instance. The pitch, frequency, and intensity of the cry will change depending on what the baby is trying to communicate. And body language can provide other nonverbal clues. This data varies from baby to baby, so it can take time for parents to compile and interpret. In addition to learning the baby's secret language, parents can learn a lot just by trying to adopt the baby's perspective. Infants are very delicate, with sensory systems that are easily overwhelmed. When the baby is upset, parents should practice simple observation, noting the surroundings, sights, sounds, and other environmental information. Something that seems like background noise to an adult, such as a dog barking, might be frightening and overwhelming to a baby who perceives the noise as a threat. Babies often cry loudly when they're overstimulated, using the cries as a sort of defense mechanism that blocks everything else out. A parent responding to an overstimulated baby should work to create a calm and soothing environment, closing the curtains, quieting any noise, and comforting the baby by touch. Parents who need to pacify an upset baby should always pause for a minute to diagnose the problem. But taking this pause can be difficult for a variety of reasons. First-time parents in particular often jump to act out of sheer eagerness to help. And some parents feel guilt and shame when the baby cries. They interpret the upset as a parenting failure. Instead, parents should think of crying as information, a form of communication that the baby uses to convey a need. Key Insight 4. Babies have personal boundaries, just like anyone else. Everyone has a sense of personal space. When that space is invaded by another person without warning, it's easy to feel alarmed. Parents should respect their baby's personal boundaries by approaching the child slowly and carefully, verbally narrating their actions at every step of the way. During a diaper change, for instance, babies might fuss because they feel vulnerable, cold, and confused. But if the parent narrates what's going to happen next, it helps soothe the worry. Parents should always think of their babies as their partners in a given activity, rather than as the objects of an action. A diaper change or a bath is an activity that parent and child embark upon in a kind of partnership. Babies always need to feel secure. Parents must respond to this need in a way that provides security without creating an unhealthy dependence, such as co-sleeping. These two agendas, to raise a secure and independent child, need not conflict. By nature, humans of all ages feel safer to explore new things when they have a secure base from which to work. Any activity is a good opportunity to practice this dynamic. As the baby plays, for instance, the parent can help promote the baby's independence by letting the child lead the activity. For example, a baby may reach for his toy instead of having it handed to him, or shake or rattle himself, instead of the parent shaking it. Generally, objects that shake, vibrate, or make noise should be introduced with care. There is a fine line between delight and overstimulation. The parent's job isn't to entertain or train the baby to do something. The goal is engagement. The appropriate level of activity varies because babies develop at different speeds. Key insight 5. Bad sleep habits are self-perpetuating. Everyone needs sleep. But babies need sleep more than almost anyone, because abundant sleep is crucial for their rapidly developing brains. A well-rested baby is set up to have a successful day, whereas a tired baby will have more trouble coping with basic tasks like eating. Without rest, babies are less coordinated and more emotionally volatile, a more extreme version of how tired adults feel and behave. Another problem for babies who sleep badly is that sleep patterns are cyclical. Good sleepers tend to go down easily, and to remain asleep for longer periods of time. Ironically, tired babies have trouble sleeping at all. It's difficult for tired babies to calm down and drift off, which means that a bad night or two can quickly compound into a household crisis. Parents often blame their babies for sleep deficits, but in truth many parents shirk their responsibilities when it comes to establishing their baby's sleep schedule. Bad habits can be cemented inadvertently. For instance, a new mother might see no problem with carrying her baby around the house to help her drift off to sleep. But when her newborn starts putting on weight and the task becomes unappealing, the mother finds that her baby has grown dependent on the ritual to fall asleep. That said, rituals can be a powerful tool when they're used properly. Reading a book to a baby before bedtime, for instance, can help the child settle down. Even the best sleepers will go through periods of unrest, which is a normal part of childhood development. Growth spurts, teething, or changes in diet, such as adding solid food, can disrupt any child's sleep schedule. But such problems are almost always short-lived. Key insight 6. New parents must remember to take care of themselves. Some parents suffer from self-neglect because they're so focused on taking care of their babies. Other parents struggle with the new constraints on their lifestyles after the baby is born. Parents who don't take care of themselves will quickly burn out, as will parents who try to maintain their former professional or social lives. Mothers who have been through the physical trauma of birth have even more challenges to overcome. It can be difficult to heal properly without good sleep and proper nutrition, which are often in short supply for new parents. In addition, mothers must deal with the added stress of unbalanced hormone levels. Many new mothers feel emotionally overwhelmed by the experience, which can be compounded by hormone imbalance. Often, new mothers worry that feeling overwhelmed isn't normal, but it's a very common response to taking on such a big responsibility. Simple measures like eating well and getting light exercise, such as walking, are good ways to practice self-care. But it's also okay to indulge negative feelings, at least to a point. 10 to 15% of new mothers experience postpartum depression, in which case it's important to seek out medical help. Symptoms include persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness, a diminished appetite, and other mental disturbances. Change is hard. And the change of having a child is particularly dramatic because it touches every other area of life, domestically, professionally, and romantically. Rough patches are inevitable, but even with that knowledge it can be difficult to keep the challenges in perspective. It might take extra work to reconnect with friends, or a spouse, or colleagues after having a baby. Like every other aspect of parenting, the experience is highly variable. It's often helpful for new parents to seek out support, whether it's from a family member, a friend, or a formal support group. Key Insight 7. There are many good ways, rather than one correct technique, to feed a baby. Since it's a basic requirement of life, it seems like eating should be a straightforward subject. After all, for the first 6 months or so of their existence, babies consume only one thing, milk. But the subject of feeding babies is fraught, especially for mothers, who must navigate the controversial and politicized choice between breastfeeding and buying formula. There is no one right answer, and the baby will be fine whether the mother chooses breast milk, formula, or some combination of the two. Sometimes formula is a forced option, such as when the baby has a sensitivity to breast milk or the mother doesn't produce enough milk. Other times it's just a preference. Perhaps more important than what babies drink is how they drink. If a baby doesn't learn how to use a bottle within the first 3 weeks of life, the learning curve becomes much steeper. Women who choose to breastfeed may run into unexpected problems, in part because it's a learned skill. Many mothers come to the practice with the expectation that it will unfold without effort. But the process can be difficult and painful, and it isn't as intuitive as some women expect it to be. As with so many aspects of parenting, patience is required. 6 weeks is a good trial period for most women, and it can take the full 6 weeks to iron out the intricacies of breastfeeding, including timing and getting the baby's mouth to form a proper latch. Key Insight 8. Just like adults, babies can have bad habits. When a baby is behaving badly, it's easy to fall into the temptation of thinking the baby is acting that way willfully. It's perfectly normal for parents to project adult emotions onto babies who have no capacity for such feelings. But that's not going to address the root of the problem, which is related to behavioral conditioning. Difficult babies behave badly because their parents inadvertently taught them to behave that way, like when they wake up multiple times during the night for feedings they don't need. To correct the problem, the parent must deliberately alter the bad habit, which isn't necessarily easy. But the good news is it can be done. Almost any baby-related problem, including sleep problems, can and should be addressed by the parent. Instead of focusing on the baby's behavior, the parents should focus on what they might be doing to enable that behavior. The habit-changing process begins with a quick round of analysis, a process described by the acronym ABC, antecedent, behavior, and consequence. The antecedent is whatever triggered the baby's undesirable behavior. The behavior is the negative behavioral habit, and the consequence is whatever stops the negative behavior. Over time, these 3 elements form a feedback loop that strengthens bad habits. Habits take months or longer for adults to alter. But babies' brains are more malleable, so changing their habits usually just takes a few days. For older babies, the process will take longer because the habit will be more ingrained. Just as an adult who quits smoking might cheat by having a cigarette, a child might regress while unlearning the bad habit, reverting to the old behavior temporarily. If the parent can persist through this difficult period, the problem should pass. Important people. Tracy Hogg, 1960–2004, the author, was a child care expert. Melinda Blau is a journalist who helped Hogg write the book.